Today is the 16th of August, 2014, and this is episode 136. This program is intended for informational and educational purposes only. Cryptocurrency is new, highly experimental, and we're not experts, just obsessed companions walking the road towards a more peer-to-peer future. Welcome to Let's Talk Bitcoin, a twice-weekly show about the ideas, people, and projects building the digital economy and the future of money. My name is Adam B. Levine. I'm the editor-in-chief here at Let's Talk Bitcoin, and today we've got an episode centered on making tough choices. Recently, Stephanie Murphy caught up with Justin and Ira from the Panama-based CoinAPoll. They talk Bitcoin for everybody, life in Panama, and removing the risks of volatility without leaving the cryptocurrency ecosystem, as powered by their new service called Locks. But first, Andreas, Stephanie, and I sat down yesterday, and yes, that's right, it's actually a timely show today. We talked about the NXT theft at B tier, the possibility of rolling back the blockchain, and more. Enjoy the show. Today on Let's Talk Bitcoin, I'm joined by Stephanie Murphy.
Hi.
And Andreas M. Antonopoulos.
Hello.
You know, one of the things that's really interesting to me about consensus-based realities, which is kind of another way to call blockchain systems, right? Where what most people in the network believe to be true is in fact true for all of the network, is that if the consensus were to ever change, then you could actually, go back in time and rewrite history. In the last 24 hours, we record these shows and then there's usually several weeks of gap because we have a backlog. But in the last 24 hours, we've seen the B tier exchange, which is arguably the largest exchange trading in the token NXT. One of their servers was hacked and they lost, it looks like 50 million NXT, which is almost 1.7 million US dollars at the current exchange rate worth of that token. Yeah.
And that's a big percentage of the total capitalization, isn't it?
It's a big percentage of the total. I don't know. It's probably a big percentage of the total liquid NXT that's out there because, again, this was the biggest exchange. So people who wanted to trade were using this exchange. But, NXT has what? Is it 1 billion or 10 billion units? It's quite a few.
Well, hang on a second. I can tell you today's capitalization for NXT is $32 million. So they lost 1.7 of those, which is 5%.
If they wanted to fix this problem, quote unquote, then they could essentially roll back all of the transactions that have happened to that point and cancel out the theft. And then hopefully the B tier group has the opportunity to move their tokens before that person makes the transfer again. But I mean, this is something that's actually possible.
You could theoretically do that in a proof of work system, and we've actually seen suggestions of doing that in other altcoins when steps have happened. It is the kind of response you get primarily in altcoins that are still relatively in their maturity curve, and therefore you can still coordinate the majority of the stake or the majority of the work, the miners essentially, to do something like that. Do you want to talk about why that's a monumentally stupid idea?
Well, yeah, because it's something that they're actually considering, right?
This is like the most untrustworthy thing. I mean, it sounds like a reaction that's really attempting to deny reality because the theft happened. It was part of reality. It was written into the blockchain, and you can't just go back and erase that and expect people to trust your ledger in the future, right?
Well, but you can. I mean, that's the thing, though, is that in theory, you actually can, can't you?
Yeah, but then what becomes the criteria for when you go back and roll back the blockchain? Like, what makes an event worthy of rewriting history, and who decides that?
Bingo, that's it. You're basically saying that in order to undo the small theft, what we're going to do is violate the fundamental basis of trust of the entire currency. That's kind of like saying, well, a few banks stole some money, so let's blow up the US dollar with QED in order to cover up their mistakes and then take the whole economy down with, oh, wait, we did that. But yeah, in any case, we don't do those things in cryptocurrencies because we're smarter than that. At least that's what I thought. If you go back and you roll back the consensus mechanism, even if you can, even if it's possible, practically possible, and in a mature currency, it shouldn't be. And that's key. But if it is practically possible to do that, and you do that, what you're doing is you're violating the very basis of consensus in order to undo a mistake. And so you made one mistake already, and that was holding money in custodial accounts. And how many times have we seen this happen? You give your keys to someone else. It's not a wallet. It's a bank. And what happens in banks is the bankers steal the money. You've made that mistake, and then you go and compound that by essentially blowing up the entire basis of trust for the currency in order to undo that mistake. You make an even bigger one. This is the exact same argument why whitelists and blacklists are dangerous, because if you can violate the very fungibility and trust basis of the transaction mechanism in order to stop a theft, you may be able to stop that one theft, although in the long term you won't be able to stop more thefts. To do that, you pay the price of destroying credibility in the currency. The answer is you should have kept better care of your keys and not handed them to someone else.
This really does seem to be a key issue. The theft specifically doesn't seem to have been related to the NXT protocol. It seems to have been specifically that there was one server that BTR had that had this account on it that was not protected by, they didn't have two-factor authentication, whereas on the others they did. Apparently that made a difference, or maybe it didn't. I mean, it sounds like they lost pretty much all of their, that 50 million was the majority of their NXT holdings.
And in fact, there have been some individuals who were keeping coins in that exchange who lost some of their coins because, they basically the exchange got wiped out. By the way, how do you pronounce it? Is it better, eater, B-tier?
I pronounce it B-tier.
I pronounce it bitter.
Bitter, yeah, that's what they'll be now.
Very, very bitter.
Certainly not better.
Here's the thing. You put all your coins in a single hot wallet, those coins will get stolen. It doesn't matter what kind of security you've envisioned with two-factor authentication or how you've tried to maintain it. You put all the coins in one server on the internet, and that money's going to get stolen. And if you give your money to people at an exchange and they hold the keys, that money's going to get stolen. I don't know how many times we have to go over this lesson before people learn it. This story happens again and again. Either somebody else steals it from the owners of the exchange, or the owners of the exchange themselves run away with the money or embezzle it, or use it to pay out their obligations and gradually start fractional reserve lying to their account holders. But I mean, this is the same story again and again and again. If you have the keys, it's a wallet. If you don't have the keys, it's a bank, and banks get robbed.
Okay, so we've established that pretty much it sounds like this is a bad idea. It would be a bad idea to do this. And in fact, they've decided not to do it by looking at the thread. It's interesting that I've been reading this forum thread. It's about 45 pages long for this thing that only happened this morning. And it's just lots of back and forth with many, many people saying we should do a rollback because otherwise bad things will happen. And other people saying exactly what you guys are saying, which is that yes, but it would be much worse to destroy the confidence that the currency, that something like this could happen. And, what about the collateral damages caused by it? Because a rollback doesn't just roll back that one transaction. If somebody, transferred onto another exchange and then sold on that exchange for Bitcoin, then those Bitcoin, they'd still have those. But if the NXT chain was rolled back, they would also still have the NXT. So it's just a bad situation in general. But what I want to ask is, so this was about 5% of the money supply. Are there any circumstances where the event is so bad that a rollback would be preferable to not rolling back for the currency, that where like the loss of confidence from the event is so bad that the rollback actually is the preferable option? Can you think of anything?
No,
I don't think so. Because what's the outcome if you have a large theft? Maybe the currency collapses. If you roll back, the trust in the currency collapses. Pretty much the same thing. Yeah,
start a new currency. You messed that one up.
Bitcoin has rolled back before, though. I mean, but Bitcoin has, we had that fork last year, and there was about an 8-hour continuation where a successful double spend attack was actually made too. And that did not have this impact on the confidence. So, that was Bitcoin 3 years old. NXT is less than 1 year old. Why are those things different?
Well, first of all, that wasn't a rollback in the way they're discussing in NXT. And secondly, about 3 blocks in to the April 2013 fork, the emergency broadcast message went out and told all merchants and merchant processing centers and exchanges to stop processing transactions because of an unusual fork. So the vast majority of those blocks that got rolled back had either no or very few transactions. So people were warned to stop trading, that there was a situation like that. That's very different from going back and saying, I don't like this one transaction, and roll it back. It's very different. And the rollback that happened in Bitcoin wasn't a rollback. It was a reconvergence on another chain of transactions that was still mining as the two chains were progressing. Anybody who's got a Bitcoin client running, if they see more than 3 blocks forked, will immediately get a warning, and you should stop. Actually, it's more than 6 blocks. Once you go over 6 blocks in a fork, you'll get a warning from the software, and you should stop at that point. You should stop doing transactions because something incredibly unusual is happening. That's a 6 sigma event. And at that point, you stop. That's very different from proceeding as normal and then a day, week, month later, having your transactions rolled back because of a theft.
Well, to be fair, this was, again, this happened this morning, and they've made the decision not to roll back in less than 4 hours. So I understand what you're saying, but the main distinction that I hear from you is that this was basically automated in Bitcoin. And in Bitcoin, it was automatically caught, and it was basically automatically fixed. There was some manual stuff, some people who had to be woken up and all that jazz, but basically there was no decision to do this. It was just the only thing that obviously you could do. Whereas here, they're deciding. Is that the problem?
Well, the difference is that Bitcoin's rollback happened through the consensus mechanism without any alteration to the software. It happened through the consensus mechanism without any alteration to the software. And what happened was an unusually long fork that got reconverged. And that's a normal part of the operation of the consensus mechanism. That's entirely different. Now, the other thing I think that's important is that this shows one of the potential weaknesses of proof of stake. And one of the great things about having a lot of altcoins is you get this experimentation, and probably the most interesting experimentation has to do with failure modes. We're now seeing a very interesting failure mode scenario play out, which is what happens when the theft of coins not only affects the ownership of coins today, but because of the proof of stake system now affects the consensus mechanism and the ownership of coins tomorrow. So the thieves can now get a disproportionate 5% of the future rewards of NXT through the proof of stake system.
I wonder if this ties in with something that I wanted to mention, which is that this is not the only high profile theft of NXT. Recently, there was some person who had about 6 million NXT stolen from him and like over 1,000 Bitcoins, something like that. I wonder if NXT is being targeted. Are thieves and hackers trying to get their hands on NXT because they see some potential to do an even greater attack with this proof of stake system, or because they see value in NXT?
Well, it is one of the better capitalized coins out there, though. That would certainly make it a target. I'm looking at the ranking right now. It's number 4. So you've got Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ripple, and then NXT. That makes it a target, absolutely. And it's significantly higher than it's twice as big as the next 2 in the rankings.
I'm a fan of NXT, but I'm going to put the big air quotes on, market cap, because market cap, when it comes to cryptocurrency, isn't that good of an indicator. And so the thing that I really wonder about is if a thief actually wanted to move 50 million NXT, what would happen? Like, because you were saying that they could forge with it, and yeah, that's true. But proof of stake systems have, a problem that proof of work systems don't have, which is that proof of stake is already issued, generally speaking. And in the case of NXT, that's certainly true. So all you're doing is competing for transaction fees.
Speaking of bitter, they actually froze a deposit, I guess identified to be stolen coins of 3 million NXT. A couple of weeks ago.
So, and here we get into fungibility. See, this is the really interesting part. It's just watching how the community is going to react to this. So they threw out the idea of rolling back the blockchain. That was perceived to be too dangerous, and the upside would not outweigh the downside. So, but I mean, you can do this stuff. You can very easily look at these these accounts and see the balances and see where they go to. So if the only place that you can actually move them in bulk is on a centralized exchange, and there are only a few centralized exchanges, then you might actually be able to kind of prevent the person from doing anything with them, besides selling them to somebody else.
No, you can persuade yourself that you can do this and be in denial of the reality. And the reality is that if you start doing this, that's going to lead to countermeasures. And the first countermeasure that's going to lead to is that people are going to start remixing those particular coins very, very vigorously, shaking up the shaker until everything's tumbled around inside the NFT ecosystem, broken up into millions of tiny pieces, spread all across billions of addresses and remixed. And then what are you going to do? Then you've either tainted the entire NXT money and address supply, or you're trying to chase this down a rabbit hole that you're going to lose. So effectively, you will not only damage the credibility of the currency by introducing whitelist, blacklist, and causing fungibility problems that are probably going to catch up innocent people, or you're going to encourage people to go tumble dry all of their money in the NXT system so as to avoid being blacklisted. And, that leads to a kind of escalation, because if people do this, they're going to start putting blacklist, whitelist software directly, not just in the exchanges, but perhaps in the transactional system to stop them from mixing addresses that are known to be stolen. And now you've completely destroyed the fungibility of the currency. And before you know it, that blacklist or whitelist is being used by a government agency to impose restrictions on who can trade NXT. Again, it destroys the fungibility. So the idea that you can do this is only if you ignore the second step, and then the third step, and then the fourth step, and the inevitable conclusion of this, which again is destroy the confidence of the currency and not stop the theft in the first place.
You really identified it properly, Andreas. I think that this is the way that we don't make mistakes with Bitcoin, or we don't make mistakes with other cryptocurrencies, is by watching what NXT does here, because it sort of doesn't matter what they do. They're in totally uncharted waters at this point. They can, do whatever, and it'll be a good demonstration that this is what happens when a decently sized cryptocurrency does one of these things. So, we get to watch no matter what happens.
Yeah, I mean, what they do is they lick their wounds and carry on and accept the fact that the people who stole this NXT from Bidder achieved the result they wanted. They got the NXT. They should probably be glad if the people who stole that NXT now sell it back into the market, so that at least it's not in malicious hands and it recirculates among the regular community of NXT holders, so that it doesn't pollute the proof of stake system in the long run. They should be encouraging that the people sell this. So they essentially buy back the stolen NXT for $1.7 million now, which in the grand scheme of things is not a lot of money, and the community can probably absorb this, learn the lesson, stop using exchanges with custodial accounts, and move on. That's the only possible answer that doesn't damage the credibility of the currency.
So there is one other option, and that's been floated a couple of times. NXT has a built-in messaging system. And so they actually have the ability to explicitly reach out and have a conversation with the guy who actually stole this. He registered a username this morning called the Sir for this purpose. And so they've been talking about, what if we pay him 20% of the Bitcoin and he sends the NXT back? And it sounds like, is negotiating with terrorists a better option compared to the other ones? Or is it, if we were giving advice to the NXT community, what would you say?
It sounds like that might be what would go on anyway, except without the ability to communicate directly. So maybe this is just a little bit of a technological advancement here.
I think it's always a good idea to negotiate with everyone. And I think someone who steals NXT is not a terrorist. And the idea that you don't negotiate with people is ridiculous on its face. We negotiate with everyone.
It's always good to have a periodic reminder of, keep control of your keys, and don't trust an exchange to be a bank unless you want to have all the problems that come with banks.
Yeah, that's the key lesson. If we can walk away from this and learn that lesson maybe a bit more firmly, history will teach that lesson again and again to every altcoin that comes along. But it also is going to teach us another lesson, which is that if you stop the people who had malicious intent or who stole the money in the first place from selling it in the open market, that's going to leave that NXT in their hands. And they may be pissed off enough to use it against the currency, using the proof of stake system against the currency itself. And that's a worse outcome than letting them sell it on the market.
LTB Coin is the official community rewards program of the LTB network. You can earn LTBC by performing any number of things you probably already do. If you listen to shows like Let's Talk Bitcoin, listen up for the magic word. When you hear it, visit letstalkbitcoin.com. Log into your free account and enter the magic word to claim your share of the listener rewards. And now it's time for the LTB Newsflash, brought to you by CryptoKit, the easiest, fastest Bitcoin wallet that installs right into your browser, so it's always there when you need it. Here are the headlines for today, the 16th of August, 2014. For merchants, Bitcoin shows more pop than potential. eBay payment units in talks to accept Bitcoin. Retailers look to Bitcoin as currency for life's basics. Did margin trading crash the price of Bitcoin? German startup says its chips have Bitcoin mining energy use. What is a Bitcoin anyway? Price of Bitcoin falls to $500, lowest level since May. Spider-Woman brings hope to Winklevoss Twins Bitcoin ETF. All this and more, check it out at kryptokit.com. The magic word for today is luck. That's luck. L-U-C-K, luck. You've got until the 20th of August to visit letstalkbitcoin.com, log into your free account, and enter your magic word for your share of the listener rewards. So usually this is where we talk about the sponsors who contributed to this specific episode, but actually in this case, I've kind of dropped the ball on it. We're in another transition period where we move from auctioning sponsorships of specific episodes, and now we're auctioning sponsor tokens that can trade on their own and can be used to represent the sponsorship of one show regardless of how it was acquired. Also, I'm about to take a little vacation. Don't worry, there's no interruption to the show, but I won't be here to handle doing sponsor reads since the episodes are being prepared in advance. Basically, you're about to get a couple pretty good episodes that have just CryptoKit sponsoring them because they've sponsored us for an entire year. So if you'd like to contribute to these episodes and share some value back, there will be tip addresses on each one, and you are encouraged, if you'd like to tip us either in LTB Coin or in Bitcoin. There will be addresses available for both. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed the slightly shorter sponsor segment. Back to the show.
Hi, this is Stephanie here from Let's Talk Bitcoin. Welcome to the show. I have a treat for you today. I'm being joined by Justin and Ira from CoinAPoll. Hi guys, welcome to the show.
Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for having us on.
Of course, yeah. Now, CoinAPoll is a company that I've had a long history with, I guess you could say. I first found out about CoinAPoll back in, what was it, maybe early 2012, like several years ago. Is that right?
That sounds right. Maybe at Liberty Forum.
I know you guys were in New Hampshire when Eric Voorhees was living in New Hampshire here as part of the Free State Project, which I am also involved with. So that's probably where I first heard of CoinAPoll. So CoinAPoll at first was a way to send Bitcoins via SMS or by email to somebody else, maybe if they didn't have a Bitcoin wallet or something like that, or you just wanted to use Bitcoin with a feature phone or a so-called dumb phone, someone didn't have a smartphone. And I know that now CoinAPoll is much more than that, is becoming much more than that. But tell me a little bit about the company and the history and what you originally set out to do.
CoinAPoll has been around since early 2012. Started out with a pretty nifty SMS and email wallet. So you could send Bitcoins via SMS or via a dumb phone or just using the SMS network.
When you use CoinAPoll to send Bitcoins to, like, for instance, a new user, like you send it to them by SMS or by email, you're not actually sending them the Bitcoins to their email address, right? You're giving them sort of like a claim on some Bitcoins that CoinAPoll is holding, right?
That's correct. We set up a wallet for them and just send a link so that with that link, they're able to access their wallet.
Okay. And then, who has the keys, right? Is it you who has the keys and then you give the keys to them, or?
Yeah. So we hold the private keys in this scenario.
Yep. And so in order for someone to get control of their private keys, would they have to move the Bitcoins to another address, or can they import the wallet somewhere else?
With CoinAPoll, it's a shared wallet, so we always hold the keys, and that's an architectural design decision to allow us to support some of these features that would not be possible with a more decentralized model.
have there ever been any issues with that sort of format? Have there ever been any security compromises or issues with people being sent Bitcoins through CoinAPoll and then losing access to them somehow?
We've had some minor customer support issues around that, with people, sending it to an email address and making a typo in it or something of that nature. But as far as I know, there haven't been anyone who's had their coins directly stolen, which is actually kind of surprising because email is not, most people don't secure their email addresses extremely well.
Yeah, exactly.
And we do warn people that, this is mainly a convenience tool, the email and SMS features. They're for setting up kind of new users. And if you want to store, a large amount of funds, then that's probably not the best solution for you.
Right. Okay. And so how many people have done this? Like, how many users would you say that you've maybe brought into Bitcoin?
Tens of thousands.
Wow. That's cool. All right. So yeah, I mean, one of the first kind of Bitcoin companies out there who was bringing Bitcoin more mainstream, I guess, making it more accessible to people who had never heard of it before, didn't know what it was, and just wanted a way that they could understand to kind of use it. So would you say that CoinAPoll's, is that sort of part of CoinAPoll's mission, like ease of use, making it accessible to people?
Absolutely. Yeah. We believe that the core value proposition that Bitcoin brings to the world is access. There are a lot of people who are kind of left out of the world's markets and financial systems. And Bitcoin is really the best chance that they have to join the global market. And CoinAPoll's one of the reasons that, we built these services for new users, and one of the reasons that we're located in Panama is so that we can grow this access and kind of protect that inherent value of Bitcoin.
But you can only send to phones with US and Canada phone numbers, is that right? If you send Bitcoins to SMS with CoinAPoll?
That's changing very quickly. That was kind of our initial proof of concept system. And the US and Canada restriction was solely because that was what we could do with our telecom partner. But clearly, lots of people in the US and Canada have smartphones and they don't really need to use an SMS system. It's really a better fit for the developing world, where maybe 80% of the people have phones, but only 10 or 20% have smartphones.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So cool. I gotcha. Ease of use. And one more thing I want to talk about before we go on to what's going on next with CoinAPoll. I know you guys relocated, right? You moved to Panama. Tell me about that, and why did you do that?
Yes. So we moved to Panama a little over a year ago. And as I mentioned, we're committed to growing access to Bitcoin and really trying to make it easier for people to use. And specifically, the people we're targeting are, the unbanked people of the world, the people who live in areas where their local currency is highly inflationary. These aren't, your average American or North American consumers. They have some value to derive from Bitcoin, but it's very marginal. Bitcoin provides, a couple percent edge over their typical Visa or credit card transaction. Whereas for people in the developing world who have no access to financial services whatsoever, Bitcoin is life-changing. And so we really wanted to address these needs, and we thought that the best place to do it was kind of from that same environment where we could exist in similar with similar rules.
So it had nothing to do with getting out of the U.S., which I don't blame you for in any way.
No, we love the U.S. I'm a fifth generation American. I feel very culturally tied to the U.S. I'm a little sad that the country is implementing a lot of rules that seem to me very quintessentially un-American.
Tell me about what's going on now. Where is CoinAPoll going? What's this new project?
The most exciting thing that we've been working on for quite a while now is a concept that we call locks. We're launching it on July 29th. And locks basically allows you to tie your Bitcoin to a non-Bitcoin balance and achieve stability. So what that means is that you can now exist in the Bitcoin world with a dollar balance, euro balance, or precious metals like gold or silver, and not have to worry about the Bitcoin price.
So I think this is something that a lot of people are interested in, right? They think Bitcoin is volatile and they want some kind of security or stability that they see with these other assets. Now you're saying you're not just able to tie it to like a fiat balance, but you could also tie it to something like a precious metal?
Yeah. So on launch, we are going with dollars, euros, British pounds, gold, and silver. Depending on what your preference is, you can lock whatever amount of Bitcoin value to that. When you do, you don't have to worry about the Bitcoin price volatility. Then your only concern is, did the dollar go up or down? And obviously that's a much more relaxed ride.
Okay, how do you pull that off behind the scenes? It sounds like you would be kind of taking on some risk there, or maybe even becoming an exchange. Like, how do you do that?
So we wanted to launch this, August of last year, of 2013, when we first thought of it. But obviously the hard part is doing it right so that the user isn't exposed to any fluctuation risk, and neither is the company. Obviously, we don't want to be betting on the Bitcoin price going up or down to be able to continue operations. So Ira has been building, and his team have been building basically the software that allows us to look at the Bitcoin market and the prices, look at currency rates, and perform exchanges on our back end to hedge ourselves instantly, that we're in a neutral position within seconds or minutes after a user interacts with us.
And how do you pull off an exchange within seconds or minutes?
By connecting to as many and as high quality of liquidity partners as we can. We've been in the business of market making Bitcoin for a long time. We've got accounts at all the major exchanges, and we also provide merchant services, and our customers' own volume contributes to our combined order book. And basically through all these different avenues of access to liquidity, we can be pretty sure that at any second we can purchase or sell X Bitcoins.
What if everybody decided to do this? Or what if like a large percentage of the CoinAPoll user base decided to do this all at once? Would you be able to handle it? How many people are we talking about here? How many Bitcoins?
We would be able to handle it, and the mechanism that would basically help it work is pricing. Like I said, we're looking into our internal order book. So if there's a lot of one-sided direction, our prices will actually adjust somewhat. So usually we'll be pretty, our Bitcoin exchange rate will be very well aligned with, the global Bitcoin market. But if, we had a lot of users and higher volume than an exchange, to the point where we weren't able to fill those orders externally, the internal orders would drive the price in one direction, and other CoinAPoll users would be able to take advantage of some sort of arbitrage. They'd have a favorable price. We're not really building this product for day trading or arbitrage making, but that option would exist if we saw a lot of direction in one way that would allow us to keep operating no matter what the market conditions are.
Right. And how do you make money off of it? Like, are there fees?
We don't charge any fees. We do have a spread, and we try to be transparent about that spread as possible. Basically, it's 2 to 4%, and we'll be in the 2% range as long as market volatility is low. So that means if each direction, around 1%, 1.5% is our spread that we make.
This is going to get really interesting, I think, if there's a period of a lot of volatility like we saw, perhaps last winter. I can imagine Bitcoin, shoots up to $5,000, $10,000. A bunch of people lock it in, and you guys have to sell them right away, or your software has to sell them right away for those people. Or maybe even people would kind of transfer Bitcoins into CoinAPoll just for these purposes, of being able to lock them in and sell them kind of quickly. Do you see that happening? Because, for some people, this might be actually faster than using an exchange.
As we've been building this product, I can't tell you the number of times that internally we've said, man, I wish Locks was ready so that I could be using it personally. Just as Bitcoin users, as just people in the world that get paid in Bitcoin, the number of times we've said, it would be really nice to just, lock some of my Bitcoin away to another asset without having to, open an exchange account, go through the KYC process, wait for, their verifications, and then start making bid and ask orders and trying to figure out how to do actual FX exchange, which, a lot of people in the Bitcoin world have learned how to do because that's been the only option to buy Bitcoin. But, most people aren't foreign exchange experts, and, teaching them how to do market orders and limit orders and this kind of stuff is new to a lot of people. To your question, as far as a lot of people using this, I think there are certain market conditions where it'll be very advantageous, and, the prices that we offer are instant. So whereas, if China bans Bitcoin again and I decide I want to sell my Bitcoin, even if I have an exchange account already open, which obviously, much of our target demographic, the unbanked developing world, they can't get exchange accounts. They don't have, the right papers to do so. Assuming you already have that account, you've got to send that Bitcoin to the exchange. Obviously, you don't want to keep your money on an exchange for too long and use it as a wallet. Wait the 2 to 6 confirmations and then make trades. And a lot of people that have been in the Bitcoin space for a while have been burned by sending Bitcoin, waiting, and the price moves before they're able to, adjust their positions.
In the lock system, are the only trading pairs between Bitcoin and, for instance, fiat currencies like euros or dollars and Bitcoin and gold or silver? In other words, let's say that, you want to lock a dollar price in for your Bitcoins, right? And so you sell the Bitcoins for dollars on the lock system. Can you then go from dollars to gold? Or would you have to go back to Bitcoin and then to gold?
At this point, Bitcoin is the linchpin of the whole system. So everything is priced in Bitcoin. It's meant for a global audience. So having the gold dollar rate doesn't make sense for a lot of our users. So it's actually the Bitcoin to gold rate. So the Bitcoin would be used as the intermediary step if you're wanting to change from dollars to gold or vice versa.
But I'd like to add to that just a little bit. What a lock actually is, in your question you asked if they were selling their Bitcoins for dollars. It's not an actual exchange when you do a lock. What we're providing is a variable Bitcoin balance. So we're saying that you're holding Bitcoins. The user only ever has title to Bitcoins, but the amount of Bitcoins that they have title to at any given moment depends on the exchange rate of some other asset. So you couldn't exchange, dollars for gold because you don't have either one of those. What you have are Bitcoins.
Ah, okay. And you can only ever withdraw Bitcoins from CoinAPoll, right? Okay. So actually, this is brilliant. I mean, I'm sure there are governments around the world who would try to say that you guys are acting as an exchange, but you're really not because, as you said, the customer only ever has Bitcoins. You're really just kind of a wallet service, but on your back end, you may be doing some trading because you're providing this variable Bitcoin balance for the customer.
Exactly. On the back end, we're doing some, exchange and movement of fiat and whatnot. And the whole point of that is to keep the user from having to worry about that. It's Bitcoin in, Bitcoin out. You hold Bitcoin. You get to stay in the Bitcoin ecosystem, but you don't have to worry about the Bitcoin exchange rate and, check it every morning when you wake up like all of us do now.
Do you collect any KYC type data on people, or are you going to be doing that?
Because it's Bitcoin in and Bitcoin out, we don't. One of the other prohibitions we put on the system for now is you can't transfer a lock. So you can't say, Stephanie, if you and I were both CoinAPoll customers with, and I wanted to send you $100 worth of locks, I would have to send it to you via Bitcoin. So we did that to avoid looking like any sort of money transmitter. So Bitcoin, the transmission system works really well, we think. So that's utilized for any sort of movement of value. We're, just holding holding the value for you. So it's individual sending in, individual getting out, and then the user can use the Bitcoin network for, what we all use it for today.
Right. Yeah. So how did CoinAPoll make money before this? Like, what was the business model when you're just sending Bitcoins to people by email or SMS?
That was all just a free service, and we paid the SMS fees and everything. It was just kind of to, test our system, build a wallet, have real experience, being out there in the wild. The way we've made money so far is we've been providing merchant services. So we provide liquidity for companies that buy and sell Bitcoin. And we also accept Bitcoins on behalf of merchants that are wanting to accept Bitcoins from their customers. So we've been doing that for 9 months now, and that's been our revenue model up until now.
So this is going to be a change in that.
This is an additional product. So up until now, we haven't really had a consumer product that makes us money. This is our first real foray into, going into the consumer market with head first.
Okay, I assume that with the wallet service that CoinAPoll has, if you're using locks, then you're going to have to use CoinAPoll's wallet, and that means that you would be holding the private keys for people's Bitcoins. Is that right?
If people use the CoinAPoll wallet, we do have the private keys, but you do not need to use our wallet to use locks. When you set up, you can set up a $100 lock or a 1 ounce gold lock, and we give you a Bitcoin address, so you can send it from any wallet that you already have. You don't need to send coins to a CoinAPoll wallet first.
Sorry, can you explain that again? I think I missed that.
Sure. So if you want to lock an ounce of gold, you do need to set up an account with in our system with a username and password. But at that point, when you select 1 ounce of gold and lock, we give you a Bitcoin address and an amount to send to us. As soon as the Bitcoin arrives, like we were just describing a little bit earlier, in this instance, we'd be buying a gold contract. We're not actually holding Bitcoin in that scenario for very long, just in the interim. We're not holding private keys for users in the locks scenario. If they're using our CoinAPoll wallet, we are.
Okay, this is a really interesting proposition. So it's kind of like you're giving up maybe some control of your Bitcoin. I don't know if new users really see it that way. Maybe old users are the ones that are like holding onto their private keys for dear life and wouldn't trust them with anybody. But, you are going to be holding the Bitcoin or, using the Bitcoin to hedge yourselves, as you said.
Right.
But you can have the security of having it locked in and sort of fixed to another type of asset if that's something you want. Really interesting.
There is an element of trust involved, but that's, there's always some sort of trade-off. So the people that are fully committed to only holding their funds themselves and not allowing trust of anyone else, that's awesome. Bitcoin allows that, but there's options. So
we've got a listener question, if you guys are up for answering this.
Yeah, why not?
Okay, well, this comes from Ivan. He wants to know, what does CoinAPoll think of the NYDFS bit license? Are they worried that this sort of regulation will end up being implemented in broad strokes across the U.S. or other developed nations? And if so, what will be the impact?
It is definitely concerning. In particular, we think that Bitcoin already has a good set of regulations built into it. That everyone who's been using it up till today has been pretty happy with. There definitely needs to be more due diligence by companies similar to ours who are holding funds on customers' behalf. But the bit license, proposed bit license legislation or regulation barely addresses that and tries to enforce all these other rules that even contradicts the regulation that's inherent in the Bitcoin protocol itself. So I think they're going to have a lot of trouble enforcing it, and really maybe they have a fundamental misunderstanding about what Bitcoin is and what's possible in the system.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys would be illegal under that. I mean, we'd all be illegal, including Satoshi, but you guys would definitely be illegal. So, I mean, what are you going to do if that comes into play? You're just going to block New York customers or what?
We already do block New York customers.
I see. Do you block all U.S. customers, or is it just New York?
We do block all U.S. customers. As I mentioned, our main goal is to increase access to Bitcoin, and that's something that we feel we can't compromise on. Bitcoin is going to be kind of persecuted in various jurisdictions around the world, and regulators and governments will try to put up barriers to access. And in those areas, our services may simply not be operable. And that's really a sad thing for the people that live there. But, we will follow those local rules.
It is sad for the people who live there, unless they have a VPN, maybe.
Well, that's the wonderful thing about technology, right? It empowers individuals.
Okay, we got another listener question if you want to move on to that. This is from DPC. They say, where are most of your customers from, and what countries are you expecting to be the biggest customer growth over the next 2 to 3 years?
As Justin mentioned, this is our first major foray into the consumer market. As far as where most of our customers are from, that's yet to be determined, I guess. We'll see in a week. As far as where we expect the most growth, we clearly think that the growth is going to be in the developing world. And specifically, Latin America has been showing a lot of interest all over. Meetup groups and kind of entrepreneurs and small businesses are popping up left and right. You hear about a new exchange in this country or that one every week. Latin America has the right demographics for Bitcoin to really take off there. There is a large percentage of the people are unbanked. Their local currencies are pretty badly managed, and people don't have a lot of faith in them. And because of these factors, we're seeing enormous growth so far in Latin America. Okay,
tell me about how you think that could apply to the new locks service. Like, are people going to be using feature phones, Bitcoin to SMS? You think people are going to want to lock in their Bitcoins, Argentinians or something like that?
We do think that locks is going to be a very attractive service for Latin America. In particular, I mentioned that in Latin America, they have a lot of trouble with local currencies. A lot of the currencies are experiencing very high inflation right now. And because of that, the people don't have a lot of faith in them, don't want to save in them or store, Argentinian pesos, for instance, any longer than they absolutely have to. And so far, we've seen some interest in Bitcoin itself as an asset for these people to hold, because as volatile as it is, Bitcoin is still more attractive to them than the peso. But Bitcoin has a very high risk tolerance as well. And so that's not for everyone. The everyday person is not necessarily going to look at the volatility of Bitcoin as much, much better than the volatility of the peso. And that's where we think that assets like gold and silver and the dollar can come in, because they have a long familiarity. Everyone has a kind of a long-standing relationship and understanding of the value of these assets.
Yeah, I mean, some people use dollars anyway, sort of illegally. And I know in Argentina, that's big, right?
Yeah, in Argentina, the black market is huge. If you try to put the kind of restrictions that they have on currency, then people are going to find ways to get around it. You can go to any corner in Buenos Aires and do illegal cash exchanges, and there's no effective control over that.
Take that a little bit further. One of the growth areas that I see for locks in the longer term. So obviously we offer it via our website, and users can come directly to us and lock using the website interface or via SMS as soon as we get the telecom partners and launch in those markets. But we also provide locks via API. Businesses that want to partner with us can actually offer locks to their customers. So as entrepreneurs in these markets start figuring out how to, reach people, tell them about Bitcoin and how it's better, if they integrate with locks, they don't have to explain, now you can send money all over the world. It's basically free. It's basically instant, and you have control over it. That part still holds true, but they don't have to explain Bitcoin, the currency. So, most people that have been in Bitcoin for a while have tried to explain the Bitcoin currency, and you use analogies. It's trades on exchanges, and that's what sets the price. And you have to go through, a basic education of how the currency markets work. So for average users that aren't, financially savvy or don't think about finance on a day-to-day, there's a lot of barriers to overcome into getting comfortable with, using Bitcoin as a tool. If a local partner has a market where they can get Bitcoin use, now they don't have to make their end users hold Bitcoin, the asset, and worry about which exchange is doing well, which way is the price going. They can hold a dollar asset or a euro or gold, and then when they're ready to send it, use the Bitcoin network.
Do you see applications for remittances with us?
Yeah, potentially. Anytime that you have to hold, Bitcoin for a period of time and don't want the value to change, there's a use case. So, the first company that cracks the remittance market, if you are able to send Bitcoin to your uncle in Mexico, and maybe he has to wait a little bit before he can find an exchange, he has to go to town. Instead of worrying about what's going on with the Bitcoin price, if he's got that locked to $200, as soon as he's able to exchange it for pesos or whatever he's looking for, the concerns over the Bitcoin price just go away.
The requirement to be able to access the website in order to put the lock in place, though, right?
Or SMS.
Oh, so you can do a lock by SMS.
Correct.
Wow, that's cool. Okay, so you got everything covered. It really does sound like that could be useful for remittances.
We're really focusing on the access methods and not just making it, people with smartphones, but anywhere that people would want to use locks, that they have the access. That's something we really drive home as we develop all of our products.
So one thing I'm curious about is, what is it like? Like, tell me about life in Panama and about running a Bitcoin business in Panama.
It's awesome. We got a really nice office down here, about 15 employees. Many of them have relocated from the U.S., but we've also got a good local population and then just some international and remote workers. Panama's nice. The weather is hot all year long. You can find really good prices on a number of different things. There's a lot of adventure, beaches, mountains, surfing. You're close to Colombia. I'm actually flying to Colombia for the weekend. It's an hour flight, really cheap, and Colombia's obviously got a lot of fun things to do. I think what a lot of us most like about it is it's a little bit, people don't really pay attention to the traffic signals and no parking signs. People, if they want to do something, they do it. It's kind of a Latin American mentality versus the American mentality of following every rule and really high fines and severe punishment if you don't. Here, it's a little bit more relaxed, just in general.
And if I can expand on that just a little bit, to this kind of Latin American attitude of just do what's practical. It's kind of common sense. There's this law, but there's no one at the intersection. It's 4 a.m, so I'm just going to drive through. They apply that pretty well in Panama to business. Panama has a long history of having good business rules. For the last 100 years, it's been against their constitution to have any sort of central bank. It's literally illegal to centrally bank in Panama. And because of that, they have no currency of their own. They have no legal tender laws. They basically don't have this whole kind of oppressive section of law, which has become so prevalent almost everywhere else in the world. They're relatively open. And corresponding with that, you read the newspapers here, and every Monday we get columns in one of the local newspapers written by local libertarians, and their ideas really get out, and they're at least part of the debate here because of this common sense, just do what's practical sort of attitude.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Are there other Bitcoin companies there with CoinAPoll?
Yeah, we're aware of a few other companies that are operating here, and I've talked to a lot of Bitcoin entrepreneurs that are either in the process of relocating or are considering it and have been asking us for advice. I spent a lot of time at Bitcoin 2014 in Amsterdam talking to guys that really didn't like where they'd gotten their company set up and had been asking about better options.
So, who else is there right now?
I think the most well-known company that's actively operating out of Panama is Havelock Investments.
And what about the local restaurants and bars and things like that? Are there Bitcoin accepting merchants around in Panama City?
There are a few. One of the restaurants that we go to around the corner called Ture has some of the best burgers in Panama, and they've been accepting Bitcoin for almost a year now. Wow,
very cool. CoinAPoll's website, CoinAPoll.com, of course. And I do block U.S. customers. I'm on there right now from a U.S. connection, and it says our services are not available in your country. So just be aware of that.
We're sorry. Please tell your representative to keep Bitcoin free.
I won't be talking to them, but I might be jumping on my VPN. And you guys, thank you so much, Ira and Justin, for joining me. Is there anything else you wanted to add today?
No, just thanks so much for having us on, and also thanks for doing the voiceover for our video. It was really spectacular.
Oh, it was my pleasure. And when is Locks coming out? Is it available now, or will it be available in the next couple? couple of weeks, or are we still waiting for it?
It'll be available on July 29th.
Thank you guys so much. It's really great to catch up with you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Great to speak with you.
Thanks, ciao.
Thanks for listening to episode 136 of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Content for today's show is provided by Ira, Andreas, Stephanie, Justin, and Adam. Music for today's episode was provided by Jared Rubens, Gertie Beats, and General Fuzz. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to visit letstalkbitcoin.com or send a tip either in Bitcoin or LTB Coin. Have a good one.